Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the channel. Okay, so something a little different for you today. Last week I got to sit down and talk to an Australian senator from a minor party called One Nation, Senator Malcolm Roberts. And we were talking about, see, in Australia it's actually illegal for farmers to sell direct to the public. So we're talking about things like that. We're also talking about why farmers are demonized, especially ruminant animal farmers, regenerative farming, and the difference between local and corporate farmers, the impacts that they have on not just local economies but local health and the environment, and the forces behind it all, the people behind demonizing and the restrictions and everything else that is involved, and including the some of the propaganda and powers that be behind the nutritional sort of information that we get as well. So I hope you enjoy it. Just something a little different, and some really good information. And so have a good day. I hope you like that one, and we'll talk soon. Okay, first off, especially talking globally, animal-based farming has been demonized for many decades now, and a lot of the reasoning behind it is their impact on the environment. Now, you have been speaking on the environment impact, and you've been speaking to farmers for many years now. Can you tell us what real impact ruminant animal sort of farming has had on the environment?
Well, let's just step back a minute, David, because is there an echo?
No, you're good.
Okay. I thought I could pick up an echo here. Let's just step back a minute. It's not just ruminant farming that is being demonized. It's farming in general that's being demonized entirely. They're saying that farmers... Well, it's actually human beings, human civilization that's being demonized. They're saying that humans cannot be trusted because we don't care, we don't respect the environment, we don't respect the natural planet we're on, we're uncaring, irresponsible, greedy, rapacious. That's what they're telling us. And the same people who are telling us this is an overview, David, the same people who are telling us this are also saying, well, what we need to do is hand over our governance to them. Now, they're humans, so it doesn't make sense. It's illogical. But what they want to do is they want to get control. And this is nothing new. It's something that I learned when I started exposing the climate fraud. I started digging deeper once I realized the science was against the people pushing the so-called science. There's no scientific basis there. I then started asking, well, who's pushing it? And that was the United Nations, the World Economic Forum. And then I started discovering the globalists behind them. And it's the same story that's existed in humanity for a long, long while. The majority of humans, as Thomas Jefferson said, are wonderful, simply wonderful. Sure, we're not perfect. We each have little things that we could wish to improve. But he said, and others have said, and it's quite clear, that a few people throughout history have wanted to control others. They have sought to control. They have sought to control because they can then use your effort to make money for themselves. And always beneath control, there is fear. So these people fundamentally are afraid of people finding out what they're doing, which is insidious, it's inhuman. So that's the first thing. This is an assault, not just against ruminant farming. It's an assault against farming. It's an assault against human civilization. That's what I've worked out through my research. The other thing is it's nothing new. It's the typical suspects. They're doing it to get two things: control and wealth transfer. They want to be even richer, and they want to protect the wealth they have. They're trying to hide their control so that we don't wake up to the fact that they're already controlling so much. The second thing I want to point out is that up until fairly recently, like a century ago, people tried to control using force, intimidation. They've also used financial power. They've used control of property rights. They've used financial power. They've used military control, force, their own security guards, etc. What they've been doing in the recent decades, say since the United Nations was formed, was doing it surreptitiously. They're doing it through control of people's knowledge, control of people's approach to life. And what they've been doing is indoctrinating people. And one of the things they have been indoctrinating is that farming is bad. So they set us against the farmers. They set the people against the farmers. And they've been pushing messages relentlessly at us. Farming is bad. Ruminant animals are bad. They want control of food supply. They want control of energy supply. They want control of water. They want control of property rights. They want to remove property rights. These are not just my words. These are the globalist words themselves. The United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and a few globalist parasitic billionaires like Bill Gates. These are their own words. Bill Gates was recently in Australia earlier this year meeting with Prime Minister Albanese, and they both said separately that they would discuss 5 topics: environment, climate, energy, food, and health. Yeah. In all 5 of those areas, Bill Gates has no qualifications, none at all. In all 5 of those areas, he has dramatic conflicts of interest. So he is after that. And the governments, both the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, both the Tories and the Labor Party in Britain, both the Republicans and several of the Democrats in the United States, not all the Republicans, but several of the Republicans, are basically part of a uni-party. You'll notice they're all red and blue, and they're all just 2 parties, and people think they're different. They're not. If you look at the policies here in Australia, Liberal Party, Labor Party are basically the same. They both have been demonising farmers. They both have been undermining farmers. They've both been hollowing out the bush. They want to get control of food production, and they want control of your property rights. So that's the bigger picture. So far as farming ruminants is concerned, that's the other thing. They have captured the so-called science, but they haven't got the science behind them. They've got fabricated science called science, and they're using that to protect the environment, to protect to protect food, so they say, but they're actually destroying both the food production and they're destroying the environment. Murray-Darling Basin is supposedly based on science. It's based on bullshit, and it's destroying the environment repeatedly. So now I haven't seen any evidence of ruminants destroying the planet, ruminants destroying the environment. So, you're more knowledgeable on that than I am. But when you look at a farmer, male or female, spouse, on their own, whatever, what they have to do is look after the land so that when they retire from farming, they can sell the land and move to a place and retire. Or they hand it over to their children. It is in their best interest to protect the land, not destroy the land. And if they destroy the environment around their property, they destroy their property and they destroy the value of the land. The best protectors of the environment are the people who own the land, which is the farmer. That is abundantly clear. And what we've seen is the Queensland government, the New South Wales government, state governments, the federal government deliberately destroying the reputations of farmers, saying they don't care, saying they're environmental vandals, so that they can get control of their property rights. And for those who don't believe that statement, they have stolen farmers' property rights in order to comply with the United Nations Kyoto Protocol, so farmers no longer control the rights to use their land. And the Queensland government's gone further by controlling their use of pesticides, fertilisers, soil runoff. Now, just think, this is illogical because the farmer's key asset is his or her soil. Whether they're growing crops or they're raising cattle, the soil is the key asset of a farmer. A farmer does not let soil run off the land unless through ignorance. And we've seen ignorance in the past, but not in recent decades. That farming practices, when one farmer gets a better understanding of farming through regen agriculture or any other practice, they then quickly learn about it and to share it. So the farmers are the ones who care for their land. It's in their own financial interest. It's in their own spiritual interest to do so. Commercial interests. And so what we've seen is bullshit being dressed up as science and paraded by the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, WWF, notorious for hurting farming. And WWF has said, both in America and in Australia, that they wanted to stop the farming of meat. They want to stop the fishing industry. WWF has used millions of dollars to buy fishing licenses in the Gulf of Carpentaria to the north of Queensland. And what do they do when they buy them? They shut them down. So WWF is out to destroy the cultivation of and the manufacturing of protein, animal protein. So that's what these people are doing. So it's not a simple answer, but farming, I've never seen any negative evidence showing that farming of ruminants is harmful. To the contrary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. The farmers need to make a living from the land, so they're not going to do anything deliberately to try and destroy the land. They're going to take care of it as best they can.
We have cross-examined their witnesses, their scientists who've been pushing this bullshit, and they've got no evidence. And in fact, the evidence, Peter Ridd, a fantastic scientist, physicist working on the Barrier Reef, developed tools that are used worldwide for measuring reef sediments and chemicals on the reef. They're showing no change whatsoever, no contamination, not only on the outer reef, on the middle reef, and even on the inner reef, close to the land. None.
Yeah, when it comes to, I know some of the runoff BS that they've been pushing about destroying the coral reef. The Great Australian Reef is actually larger now than it has been in all of history, recorded history.
Yes, it's healthier now
growing.
than it ever has been.
Yeah, it's healthier than it's ever been. So that part of the argument is just ridiculous.
Well, we to prove the point, in 2016, I think it was, we arranged for media to join us on the Great Barrier Reef. Pauline came, a couple of other senators, and we went snorkeling at a place called near Keppel Island it was, and it had been devastated by a cyclone some years ago, but it had recovered. It was still recovering, but it was well and truly healthy. And one of the journalists said to me, "This is not the place where the damage is. The damage is 1,000 kilometres north." And what the hell's between here and 1,000 kilometres north? Healthy reef. I mean, they don't think when they talk about this. And sure, there's bleaching events here and there. The bleaching events occur from warm temperatures, cold temperatures, from excessively low levels of sea level, from a whole variety of things. Bleaching is a natural event. It's been going on forever. We know that. The science shows that.
Yeah, they somehow think that one sort of natural disaster is going to be the end of the late. A few years back, they told us it was never going to rain again. Like it was never going to be. It was just insane.
Well, it's money, David. Peter Ridd was removed from from James Cook University in North Queensland because he dared call out the corruption in the science on the Barrier Reef and the corruption on the science in climate change, variability. And what a lot of the professors, what a lot of researchers are doing, if they don't proclaim climate damage, if they don't proclaim some doomsday scenario, if they don't proclaim damage to the reef, they don't get funding. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And a lot of them just toe the line because none of them are brave enough to stand up to it.
Well, Peter Ridd is. He's well and truly brave.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, he does great work. Okay, but back to the farming. A lot of the issues that we have, with farming, crop farming, for example, actually takes a lot out of the soil, whereas regenerative farming and cattle farming actually creates soil. And I think that's a big issue. I think for anyone that wants healthy food, the demonization of cattle in particular, as you said, farming as a whole, but cattle in particular have been blamed for so many other issues as well. Whereas they actually replace the topsoil. They give us the soil. Everything that they take out when they eat the grass. They fire prevention, all sorts of things. They create the environment around for us. so that we can grow crops and other things as well. So this is one of the craziest things about this whole issue, that they're trying to demonize the natural source of proteins and fats because, you know, cows are somehow bad for the environment. And it's just, there's absolutely no science behind this at all. But as you said, like if you listen to people like Bill Gates, he must be one of the luckiest businessmen in the world, because whenever there's a disaster, he's already invested in the so-called solutions, you know?
Yeah. Well, what they want to do, David, is it's two things: control and wealth transfer. Control and wealth transfer. That's what they're all about. Yeah. And they want control of, I mean, Henry Kissinger, I think it was, the famous globalist tool, who died recently, aged 100. He said, if you can control money, they do. If you can control food, they want to. If you can control energy, they are on the way to doing that. Then you can control the whole continent. He was speaking of the United States, but the same applies to every continent.
Yeah.
And they want to control, instead of relying upon individual farmers who are the best protectors of the environment. The corporate farmers don't care as much because they're driven by short-term KPIs, key performance indicators. The community farmer, the local farmer, he or she looks after the whole environment because they're in it for the long term. They know that if they do damage to their land, they lose their land. They lose their productive capacity. So you've got that sense of responsibility in individual farming. The corporate, you don't have that sense of responsibility. But
that's a good point too, is they also take care of the local economy.
Exactly. They buy locally.
Farmers.
Yep.
So in that respect, why is it in Australia that it is illegal for farmers to sell direct to the public?
Well, I saw some notes you put out. I don't know what you wrote them for, or what the audience was.
There was an email that was sent to me by a cattle farmer.
Okay. The notes, well, then the farmer knows. It's the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the State Streets, the globalist money funds, investment funds that are controlling this. They own shares in Coles and Woolies. They own shares in all four of the major banks. They own shares in Qantas. They own shares in so many different companies in this country. And, for example, if you look at the four banks, the four major banks, we don't have four banks. We have one bank behind four logos. Their policies are the same. Their strategies are the same. Their products are the same. Their services are the same. And they're all owned by around about 10% in a combined valuation of ownership of BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State, etc. Some other funds in there as well. And these major funds own each other. So it's very hard to disentangle them. But you might say, well, 10% is not controlling. It is controlling because mums and dads own a large proportion of shares, and they don't take any interest in the bank's annual shareholder meetings, annual general meetings. Superannuation funds own a big chunk of the banks as well. So of the share of banks, they have significant and exercise controlling interests in those companies. They determine who's on the board. They determine who the executives are, and so the executives all pander to them. So Westpac, NAB, ANZ, and the Commonwealth Bank all push the same agenda. And if you look at them closely, that's what they're doing. And they've got that same 10% controlling interest. So as I said, we don't have one bank. We don't have four banks. We have one bank with four different logos. It's the same with other companies. And so when you've got BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street controlling Woolies, Coles, then they have control over the market, so they can raise their prices. When they control major food producers, as Bill Gates wants to be, they have control over prices. So what they're after is maximizing prices to maximize profits, and what they do is they harm the environment because they don't care about the environment, like the community farmer, like the local farmer. So they're after tying up and monopolizing the food production chain. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing the World Economic Forum talking about eating bugs. Why? Because what they want to do is cultivate bugs in near urban processing centers, they're factories, so that they can just be independent of the weather. Because when a farmer faces a drought, he or she then loses production capacity, and the prices go up, so we all pay for it. But what they want to do is control that, make it independent of the drought by feeding and cultivating bugs and then processing it. They also want a lab-cultured meat, which is not meat. It's slop. It's cancerous slop. And I asked Food and Safety Australia and New Zealand for SANS. That's right.
Yeah.
And they're about to approve lab-grown, cultured quail meat with no testing of genotoxicity. I mean, so they want to control this so that they can make their so-called fake meat in vats, in factories close to metropolitan areas, to make them independent of the climate, independent of the weather. And that's what they want to do. They want to control. They want to control what you eat.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, some of those these processed foods are already using bugs as a filler. And a lot of if you buy Doritos, for example, chips and all these heavily processed foods, some of them are already using bugs as fillers. So these are things that people don't even think about. They just grab this stuff off the shelf. They think it's actually food, but none of it actually is. These supermarkets are 99% processed garbage. So
cockroach casserole, caterpillar souffle,
and all the rest of it. Yeah, and you have celebrities pretending to eat that they eat bugs just to try and push the story. As you said, to the local farmers, there's a very big difference between the corporate farmer and the local farmers for many reasons. One, for environment; two, for the local economy, and also for the health of the population, the health of the community around them. Because locally grown, doesn't matter what you eat, whether you eat carnivore or like I do, or fruit and vegetables and other things. The locally grown, locally bought is a healthier community as well.
Well, just on that topic of sorry?
Again?
Just on that topic of carnivore, my mother was way ahead of her time. She would have been 106 if she was still alive now, but she died when she was 95 in 2013. My mother was way ahead of her time. She understood what Big Pharma was doing back when I was, 40 years ago. She was telling me about Big Pharma and how harmful it was. Yeah. She was telling me about the corruption of medicine and how that it's a disease industry. They like you sick so they can feed you stuff, chemicals that'll treat your symptoms and prolong your disease. And that's exactly what Big Pharma is doing, with the help of governments across the Western society. So we have got a sickness industry. She was telling me about Big Pharma exactly that way. And there was another point I was going to mention there. Oh, that's right. She was, in some ways, though, she, like all of us, she had her limitations. And she did some reading on food and nutrition and diet. And she said, we should be eating less meat. Now, I'll just accept that for now. When I was younger, I went on a vegetarian diet, okay? And I went off all dairy products, all meat, including fish. And then there was just something inside me that just said, eat meat. And so I listened to my body because I think that's the best source of advice. And I started eating meat again. And then, so in other words, I have been vegetarian, and not just off red meat, but off all kinds of animal fat, right? Yeah. So, my cousin, who is a phenomenal researcher, by far the best researcher I've ever seen anywhere, highly, highly objective. He was helping me research this climate fraud, and that's all it is. It's a climate fraud. There's no evidence to back up what they're saying, and I can prove that. Because I've held the CSIRO accountable 3 times for 2.5 hours each time. No one anywhere, I've asked questions of agencies, I've asked questions of ministers, I've asked questions of politicians. No one has provided that evidence, and no one has it. There's not the basis for policy, let alone the basis in science. There's none. But I asked him to help me with the climate, and he did. He's the sort of person who can go out and get 24,000 data sets from around the world on climate and energy. 24,000. And there's no evidence. He's analysed them all. Anyway, one day he called me a couple of years ago, David, and he said, Malcolm, you know that climate science is corrupt? Did you know that I've been researching food science, nutrition science, and it is almost as bad as the climate science? And then he told me what was going on. He told me what was going on, and he converted straight away to carnivore diet. And his wife converted to carnivore diet. I have not done my research on carnivore diet, but I know Peter is highly, highly objective and completely honest and very, very capable. One of the most capable people I've ever seen, not only intellectually, but also practically. Very practical, wide interests. So I converted as well to carnivore diet, and I've been on a carnivore diet now for a couple of years. I sometimes eat a little bit of greens, a little bit of broccoli. I eat dairy products, but the food pyramid, from what I understand, is upside down. Animal fats are not harmful. We were told as children, cut off the fat on your meat, just eat the lean meat. What a lot of bullshit that was. Animal fats are highly beneficial, and at the top of the food, at the base of the food pyramid should be animal fats, then meat, and then dairy products. But animal fats are wonderful for us, and they're wonderful for the brain. They're wonderful for our whole health. Peter, I've had other things going on over the last few years as I age, but Peter, he's older than I am. He's 75, quite a bit older than I am, and he said that he has more energy, more stamina. He has more positive outlook. He's never been a negative sort of person, never been a depressed person, but he says the whole outlook on life has improved dramatically. And then David, he went further. And as I said, I've never seen anyone capable of the research that this man does on any topic. He's a wonderful naturalist as well. He called me up one day and he said, you know how I've been researching carnivore? I said, yes, Pete. And he said, I've been researching the benefits of carnivore diet in terms of medical treatment of medical conditions. I said, oh, yeah. And he said, carnivore diets, he's just been making a list as he goes through his carnivore research, making a list of the diseases it cures. Just about everything. Diabetes, heart conditions, blood pressure. He's now come up with something more on blood pressure. Cancers, you name it. Carnivore diet converts, can cure it. And not only that, he's now assembling a list of doctors who actually have converted to carnivore diets themselves, and I know several of them, and swear by the benefits and they extol the virtues of carnivore diet now. So we've got back to basics.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's an ancestral way of living. We've been eating meat and animal fats for 4.5, 5 million years, and all of a sudden, in the last 100 years, it's supposed to be bad for us. Yet, there's a reverse correlation. As we eat less meat, our diseases go up and up and up. So there's absolutely no correlation there between meat and disease. Many of these doctors I've been speaking to a lot, actually, on my channel. A lot of great doctors they've had to find, like, even professors like Dr. Lufkin. He wrote the book Lies I Taught in medical school. He was a professor at a medical college. And he himself, his mother was a dietitian, and he grew up and he'd been on the vegan diet for many years, and it just caused nothing but problems. Now he's high fat, low carb diet, and that's what he's teaching now. So, I mean, there's just so many people now coming out with the evidence, and there's so many hundreds of thousands of stories of people taking their health into their own hands, and I'm one of them. I'm now 9.5 years in remission after being stage 4 blood cancer twice in 2 years.
But what I would say now is animal fat, just eat it. Just eat it. That's what the
salt's another one that scares people for some reason, and salt is a natural electrolyte that we need for our bodies as well. So I mean, there's just, it's not so much either that the food industry or the nutritional science is corrupt. It's actually founded by a religious ideology of veganism, like a lot of it, like the Dietetics Association, anything, is all founded by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, like Kellogg's and all these cereal companies and things like. Someone who did amazing research into what's behind the food pyramid and things like that is Belinda Fettke. She's Dr. Gary Fettke's wife down in Tasmania.
Oh, he's amazing, and so is she, from what I've heard. Amazing.
Yeah, they are both absolutely amazing people, and their knowledge of what's behind it all is second to none. Belinda Fettke is actually, she's one of the original researchers that actually found all this information. Is now gone global, so with many other doctors. So really, really great work.
Yeah, there are so many things we need to question. The climate bullshit, the climate fraud, the Murray-Darling Basin Murray-Darling Basin Authority, the Murray-Darling Basin Plan based on bullshit, contradicts the science. There's so many things in our nutrition, our health, the childhood injections, the COVID injections.
Well, I think at the base of it all, whether it's food, politics, or anything else, everything feeds Big Pharma.
Big Pharma or BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. But BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street own Big Pharma.
That's right.
They own the mainstream or the mouthpiece media, the legacy media, which and now people are waking up to that, and they're tuning into people like you rather than the mouthpiece media so much these days. Tucker Carlson, look how he's going now that he's left mainstream media. So we've got a lot more independent podcasters out there, and that's great because the media, the defense forces, they cultivate wars because that's their way of making a lot of money. You know, there was a congressman, I've forgotten who it was, but he said, someone said, why are we sending, this is in America, why are the Americans sending so much money to Ukraine? He said, they're not sending it to Ukraine, they're sending it to the American defense establishment. That's where, so he said, they'll get it back anyway.
Yeah, that's right. It all comes back to them, doesn't it? Yeah, it's the same, and it's the same routine, every decade, there's the same routine. There's always another reason for them to, send more money to themselves, I guess.
And it's also quite often, David, based upon fear. We've got to have you under control. You've got to be terrified of this. The environment's going to hell. The planet's going to hell because of humans. The COVID, all the rest of it, and give us control always. And sometimes it's through convenience. Sometimes it's through fear.
And it's always our natural sources that are the problem, while they'll give us these solutions that are actually destroying the environment. I just read an article yesterday in Scotland. They just cleared 17 million trees to put up a wind farm. I mean, where is the logic?
They're doing it here. They're taking beautiful rainforest and beautiful adjacent rainforest up in North Queensland and destroying it in the name of protecting the environment. What they're doing is killing the environment to save it. That is complete lunacy.
Yeah, under the guise of saving it. Yeah. Yeah, it's disgusting what's going on. Another problem, we're talking about farming, comparing local farming again to these corporate farms for all these processed companies. As I said, local farms, they help the local economy, the local health, and much more, and the local environment. But Australian farmers are suiciding now, one every 4 days or so.
Right.
That's incredible.
I haven't seen those figures before, but I know that a lot of farmers are suiciding, as are doctors as well, after the COVID mismanagement and doctors being bullied and victimized and silenced and censored. But farmers are under enormous pressure because of the banks, which are owned again or controlled by BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State, etc. So and they're put under so much pressure through regulations that are based on bullshit. So they're trying to do the impossible, and when people are trying to do the impossible, they're under enormous stress. And sometimes farmers get so caught up, of course, like all humans, they get caught up in the short term because of the bank pressure. The banks send them threatening letters to end their business, and what can you do under those circumstances? You know, you just feel overwhelmed. And so you see government trying to tell you, the government taking your land and telling you how you must run. How the hell can you have accountability when you haven't got control of your land? How the hell can you have accountability for the decisions when you don't make the decisions? You're forced into doing this. When things are taken out of your control, that's when people are most desperate. But what we need to do is to get people to realize they can still have an influence, and they need to stay alive. Suicide's never the way out. It always hurts those you leave behind. It also hurts our own spirit. But we need to just get help, seek help from the community, and work together. Sorry?
Yeah, we need their voice. Yeah, why this is happening, and the more voices, the better. The easier it's going to be for everyone. So
we also need them. We also need them as intact humans, because that they add to the community. They're part of the community. So leaving the community through suicide is a terrible way to destroy the community.
So as you said, they don't have control of their own land. So how do we restore? People need to be able to buy from their local farmers, for one, and this would help give them more control and help give them more revenue so that they can keep farming. So how can we change that?
Well, you have to do several things, I think, David. But one of the things is you keep doing what you're doing, raising the truth. We are in a democracy, supposedly.
Supposedly, yeah.
We have a parliamentary representative democracy. We elect, as citizens, we each have a vote. If we're an Australian citizen, we have a vote. We elect fellow citizens to govern us on our behalf, because we can't have 27 million people making decisions. Although I think that is where many decisions should be made, through a citizens-initiated referendum, which Pauline has had as policy for many, many years. So let's just go back to basics, and then we'll come back to citizens-initiated referendum. So Australia was the first and only country in the world in which the citizens voted on their constitution. Many people don't know that. At the top of our constitution is not the High Court, is not the politicians, is not the Prime Minister, is not the lawyers, not the bureaucrats. The top of our constitution is the citizen, you and I and other citizens around this country. And what we do is we're in charge of our constitution. Only through a referendum of the citizens can we change the constitution. Not only that, it is the voters that elect the governments. And so what we've had for far too long, we've had a society that's been very productive, very wealthy. We've had one of the highest standards of living in the world until the last couple of decades, and then we've been going backwards. So people now know there's something wrong. But they basically handed over control to the bureaucrats, handed over control to the small group of politicians, handed over control to the United Nations and World Economic Forum, the globalist billionaires. The United Nations and the World Economic Forum were formed as vehicles for the globalist parasitic billionaires and the major corporations. So what we've got now is essentially control through those corporations. Government is no longer working for us. Government is working for the corporations to steal money from us, control and wealth transfer. So what we have to do is recognize that as citizens we have enormous power. Our vote is enormously powerful. The aggregation of millions of people's votes determine government. So what's been going on in this country because of the globalist media has been pushing this lie that you can only vote for Labor or Liberal. You watch what happens when the elections come around again for federal parliament.
Yeah.
Labor, Liberal, Labor, Liberal, Labor, Liberal, National Party, Greens, National Party, Greens, Labor, Liberal, Labor, Liberal, National Party, Greens. That's all you hear. And people are conned into thinking that that's all you can vote for. And people are also thinking, well, I don't really know much about it, so I'll vote the way Mum voted Labor, or I'll vote the way Dad voted Liberal. So they just do what their parents did. But what we've seen is a wonderful trend over the last 40 years or so, from going from 45% vote Liberal, 45% vote Labor, with 10% in the middle at swing, and they determine the government. Then we saw 40-40 with 20% swing. Then we see 35-35 with 30% that swing. In the 2019 Queensland, in the state of Queensland in 2019 in the federal election, 22% of people voted in the Senate for the Labor Party. 22%, that's just over 1/5. Currently in federal parliament, we have Anthony Albanese, the Labor Party Prime Minister, with less than a third of the vote. So what are preferences? Another story. Let's come back to preferences, because preferences are essential. It's just that they've been corrupted. But a key point is the parties do not control preferences. That ended with the 2016 election. The parties do not control preferences. You, the individual voter, you assign your preferences. You own your preferences. So what happens is we've got to get more and more people to realize that they need to be involved in politics. They need to vote for a third party, not one of the two major parties, and not the Greens. The Greens are the most anti-human party there is. They're tied in with the Labor Party. The modern Labor Party is no longer the Labor Party. But what we need to do is get an alternative voice. Instead of the Liberal Nationals and the Labor Greens, which form very close working relationship, we need independent third parties. And what we've got now at state elections, well, One Nation has a member of parliament in every mainland state parliament and the federal parliament. We have two. And what we see is increasingly the One Nation party is becoming one of the two preferred parties, one of the top two preferred parties in some electorates. So the closer we're getting to having more and more elected representatives. At the moment, we don't have the balance of power in any area, but we are getting close to having the balance of power with just a few more senators and a few more members of state parliament. And the balance of power doesn't mean we'll form government, but it means we can stop the bullshit, we can stop the lies, we can stop the fraud and corruption that's going on. So what we need is an increase, an acceleration in the trend towards third parties. So that's the first point. So what's happened is the citizens just have given up. What we need to do is get citizens to actually vote for someone other than Labor or Liberal. People who give up and don't vote, they're just basically voting for Liberal or Labor. So we've got to get people more actively involved, understand the character of their candidates that they've got for voting, understand the policies and understand the values of the parties, and then vote accordingly. So do you want to push the globalist agenda? If you do, vote Labor or Liberal. If you don't, vote One Nation. That's what we're basically saying. You've got a uni-party. The Labor Party and Liberal Party form together to form a uni-party. Their policies are almost identical. They're both pushing globalist policies. So instead of voting for the uni-party, you can vote for One Nation, for example. We're the top alternative party. So that's the first thing. Get actively involved. And the second thing is get involved by sharing the information that you put out. If you like my videos, share them. If you like my speeches, share them. Educate people, because it's a really simple message. Pauline has always put the country's interest first ahead of the globalist interest. She's against the globalist interest, and so am I. The third thing is get involved in terms of being a volunteer, handing out how to vote cards, door knocking, scrutineering after the elections to make sure the elections are a fair result. The next point I wanted to point out was preferences. Where you have first past the post, then a party with 33% of the vote can take charge. But where you have preferences, you've got to get 50% or more, 50% plus one vote. You've got to have a complete majority of the preferences. Now, if it's first past the post, then your vote, you just get one vote. You vote for a party, and if it doesn't get up, it doesn't get up. But if you put down your preferences in this country, then what happens is that you say, okay, if my first preference is One Nation, if it doesn't get up, then my second preference is United Australia. If it doesn't get up, then my preference goes to the third preference, which might be Christian Democrats. And then if that doesn't get up, well, Labor is going to be worse than Liberals, so I'll give my preference to the Liberals, for example.
Yeah.
But if what that means is that if people who are voting for the minor parties all are disciplined in their preferences and put the minor parties first, you get enough combined votes to knock off the two top parties. And that's what's happened. So preferences are essential. Preferences essentially mean that you can get two bites of the cherry. If your minor party does not get up, then your vote will go to whichever major party you want ahead of the other one. So it's your preference. So preferences are extremely important. Without preferences, there's no way you'd get minor parties up.
Yeah.
The third thing to remember about preferences is that you own your preferences. Parties cannot make deals anymore. That they're out. That it's you allocate your preferences. If you get a how to vote card, that is not an instruction on how to vote. That's a suggestion on how to vote. And you can say, go to hell. I'll vote the way I want. The third thing is, so citizens initiated referendum. That's been a policy of One Nation Party for many, many years. It happens in Switzerland. It happens in several other countries around the world. If the population does not like a particular rule or law that's been brought in, or a corrupt politician that is abusing his power or her power, then they can sign a petition, and once you get a certain small number of percentage of citizens on that petition, then they invoke a citizens-initiated referendum, and they put it to the people. Do you want this? Do you want this legislation in Parliament passed or not? And if they vote no, then it's removed. It's removed straight away. If you want this corrupt politician out, then say so. And if the majority say out, he or she goes out. So it gives maximum accountability. So that's what we're working towards. But even as it is now, with the current system, we can still have a decent democracy if we get people involved and taking no notice of the mouthpiece media, just getting involved and voting as you want.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. A lot of people don't, they see a corrupt system and they just figure that there's no point. I think the only way you can, even in a corrupt system, the only thing you can do is to try and overwhelm the system with your vote, and vote as much as you can to make sure that you get what you want to vote
right.
for.
Right, vote for a minor party and vote properly and formally, so that you fill out all the numbers as required. That's the only problem.
People don't understand that even if you don't have an interest in politics, sooner or later your politicians are going to take an interest in you.
Exactly.
So at some point you have to take some responsibility for the people that you are voting for, and you have to know what you're voting for. There's no point just rocking up and just ticking 1, 2, 3, 4 in the list, and that's done.
But don't get your information from the mouthpiece media.
That's right.
Get your information from podcasters, from talking to family and friends. And from watching.
Find the real news, find the real opinions, and stop listening to the, as you said, the mouthpiece media. Turn off the TV.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing, I think. I think that's the only way we can make real change in any country. Doesn't matter where you are, is you have to do it from a grassroots movement. It has to be the people. And it has to be in a big enough voice that you can overwhelm their system. So.
And there are signs that that's happening. We saw that the United Nations World Health Organization pandemic treaty and international health regulation changes, which were heinous up front, they were slowly watered down because of the opposition from African countries and from opposition from people like myself who made videos about this several years ago and spread the news. And we've woken up other people in other parliaments around the world, and they were defeated. And there's no pandemic treaty signed, and the international health regulations are just minor changes, some of them pretty good. So that's what happened. We've also heard, I haven't got the results, but I've heard there's been a dramatic shift in Europe over the weekend with votes in the European Union elections. We've had the lefties, the socialists, really been smashed. So much so that Macron, and President of France, who's an outright socialist, he's now calling a snap election before the Olympics. I mean, France is going to be hosting the Olympics in a matter of weeks, and they're calling an election beforehand. They're that desperate. So the people around the world are waking up to these globalist parasites, and all we've done is just call them out. If the other signs, another sign of positive change for us, for humanity, is that it used to be that the billionaires, the parasitic billionaires, would get together in Davos at the World Economic Forum every January, right? And initially they were quiet about it, and then they started bragging about it. And then we started calling them out and calling out the World Economic Forum. They'd never done that before. And now, if you look at the latest World Economic Forum junket in February this year, they were ridiculed. Even in the mainstream media, the mouthpiece media, they were ridiculed. And so
Well, it's
Klaus
really
Schwab
hard
is
to
ridiculed.
justify, 30,000 private jets, going to one city to tell the rest of the world that we have to cut back on carbon emissions.
Yep.
And finally, people are seeing it. As you said, they started. It used to be secret. Then they started bragging about it because they can't help themselves. Their egos are out of control, and it makes you wonder just who the hell these people think they are. That they think that they can push everything onto us. So.
And I've talked about, I don't know if I mentioned it in this, but I've talked a lot about a globalist governance, an unelected global government in taking charge of the world. The fact is, they're not my words. They're the words of some of the globalist parasites in the United Nations and the World Economic Forum pushing it themselves, and they openly talk about it. And now they pull their horns in a little bit. But I'm just quoting them. And some of the parasitic billionaires, I'm just quoting them. And so on every topic, they make money out of subsidies, out of favours, out of control that government works for on their behalf. Government has become a thief working on behalf of the predatory billionaires and major corporations.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the point. They basically just they use our system or taxes and things like that just to steal on behalf of people that are not even related to Australia, just unelected officials in a far off country that use us as revenue, basically.
We're one of the biggest exporters of natural gas in the world, and we get bugger all for it. Hardly anything for it. And we hand this over. We hand this over to Chevron and other companies, multinationals. Chevron is the world's largest avoider of tax, and we're giving them something for free that is ours. And
and
we're
not even allowed to use half of it.
No, we're one of the major coal exporters. We're second largest coal exporter. But we're supposed to be stopping use of it in this country. But we feed China the source of cheap electricity. It's insane what we're doing. It is absolutely insane.
Absolutely.
Why are we doing it? Because of the globalists.
Exactly. Yeah. Back in 1927, F. he said, feeding a population of a country by itself is the basis of public wealth, productivity, and general well-being. Basically, using our own natural resources, Australia has great potential for growing ruminant animals and farming in general, and natural resources apart from that, to be far more productive, both in health and wealth, productivity, because a healthy population can produce a lot more. And Australia, I find that, especially the last few decades, probably from the 80s, actually, you can see a direct correlation between low-fat diets and the productivity in Australia has, in year after year, gone down and down. There are more people out of work, more people are sick, have serious diseases, myself included, and many, many others that are just reliant on a medical system that is hemorrhaging money out of the country. This is one of the biggest expenditures of any country around the world at the moment is healthcare. So I think that this is one way to get that back is produce locally, especially when it comes to a balanced ruminant animal diet. So I think that's one thing that I think people need to take on board as well. It's not just about everything is political, really. When you're talking, even if you're talking about nutrition, you're talking about dietary health, population health. This all comes down to a political movement that's all intertwined. It's not something that we can escape. So it's something that everyone needs to get involved with. Not just about trying to eat healthy and going to the gym to keep your health, keep yourself healthy. If you want it freely available, and it should be, healthy food, locally grown, is a God-given right. It is our God-given right. We should not be giving that up to globalist elites that live in a far-off country, telling us how we should and shouldn't eat. So I think this is a really important message that people understand that it's not only better for the environment, it's better for your health, it's better for the economy. It's paramount that people should get involved with in one way or another. Whether you take
I
up farming,
agree.
yeah,
I agree, whether it be farming, food production, fishing, water supply, whether it be health. Robert F. Kennedy, I've got a lot of time for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
oh yeah,
He's
it's great.
doing remarkable things. He's a bit ignorant on climate. He's still believing. Well, I notice he's changed his tune a bit. He no longer endorses it, but he doesn't speak against it yet. But he will once he starts getting the evidence. He's that kind of a person, I think. But that's a leftover from his Democrat legacy. But he said recently that no other country in the world spends more per person on health than the United States. And he said the United States has the world's worst health. Whether it be obesity or chronic disease, the United States.
The more money we spend on health, the sicker we get.
Well, that's the thing. I think we've got to stop talking about spending money on health, because the American system is not about health. It's about giving people big pharma treatments of symptoms. Sometimes it's about creating the symptoms themselves, whether it be blood pressure or many other symptoms. Have a talk to Peter when you call him about that, because he's just done a study of blood pressure around the world. There's no correlation between blood pressure and heart disease. None. Anywhere in the world. So, but the point is, Big Pharma has been promoting sickness. They've been promoting statins, for example. I had I went to my doctor for a checkup just to see how I was going. I can't remember there wasn't any issue there. And she said, "Oh, let's have some blood tests." So we got some blood tests. "Oh, your cholesterol's a little bit high." "Oh, really? Okay." They don't know what the right levels of cholesterol are. Some people, the cholesterol high is natural. Some people, cholesterol is low. They don't know what the thresholds are. My brother-in-law, fortunately, is a doctor, and he gave me a book some years ago called The Cholesterol Myth. I didn't read it, but my wife read it. And it shows how statins are so damaging and how they're based on bullshit, and yet they're a big pharma drug. And so
any drug that lowers your cholesterol is going to be bad for you. We need the only correlation to any kind of disease and cholesterol is when your cholesterol levels are too low. We could. Sorry.
I don't know that, but I'd certainly believe you, because I know that there's a lot of bullshit spoken about cholesterol. So I went back to my doctor to get the blood results, David, and she said, "Oh, your cholesterol is high. Let's put you on some statins." And I said, "Like hell, I'm not going anywhere near those things." And then a year later, I went back, and my cholesterol was down. I mean, it could be varying naturally, okay, because cholesterol is not a marker of bad health. So I went down in cholesterol, and it was black on my blood test result, not red. She said, "Oh, that's marvelous. You got your cholesterol down. What have you done?" I said, "I've converted to a carnivore diet." That was the end of the conversation. That was it. Gone. Finished. She would not question, and she's a sensible, bright, intelligent woman. She would not question her own thinking about statins. She would not question her own indoctrination about cholesterol. And this is a good, intelligent woman.
Well, this is the thing too. After all the doctors that I've interviewed about this subject, doctors are not educated in nutrition for a start. They are educated to identify a certain blood marker and a drug that will help with that marker. And even these markers all these blood markers are taken on an average level. And as we get sicker, as the population gets sicker, these average levels get lower and lower, and it just continuously changes. So it's just ridiculous. All they are trained to do or indoctrinated to do is to identify a marker that will sell them a drug. That's basically what they do. They are pharmaceutical salespeople.
So it comes back to, we've got to think for ourselves, and what the nutrition evidence tells us is animal fats.
Exactly. Think locally, buy locally, take care of your local economy and your local, and take charge of your own health. And also get involved with your politics, because, as I said before, if you don't take an interest in what your politician's doing, your politician will take an interest in you sooner or later. So.
Yep, and I'd add one more thing to that, David, and that is that be very, very proud of being human. Sure, as a species, we're not perfect, but we are the only species capable of learning when we make a mistake.
That's right.
The rest have to be trained into it. We can do that ourselves. We can do that as a species. Humans are wonderful, and we need to be very, very proud of it. Many of us have been conditioned every day of our lives, thanks to the United Nations and to the World Economic Forum, that we are a blight on the planet. We've had senior royalty figures saying they want to come back as a parasite and as a virus and wipe out humanity. I mean, we need to be very, very proud of being our species. Very, very proud.
Absolutely, yeah. And
right.
We can do great things. Unfortunately, we've made mistakes, but such as giving over our health to other people, for example, that are just insane, criminally insane. But you're right. A lot of this agenda, the veganism diet, and all the rest of this stuff it's anti-humanism. So, anyway, I will leave it there. I want to thank you very much for your time. I realize you're an extremely busy man, but really great to speak with you and catch up with some of these things these are things that I think that people really need to get on board with, and to try and understand about the things that are affecting not only the way that they eat, but how it affects everything around them, as well as their own health as well. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. But more so, David, thank you so much for what you're doing, because the Mouthpiece Media is not to be trusted. It's independent podcasters like yourself who we have to turn to. So thank you so much. Keep going.